Good afternoon. National Assembly of Wales is now in session, and first item this afternoon are questions to the First Minister. Question 1 is Jenny Rathbone.
Diolch, Llawyd. What is the Welsh Government doing to support the Keep Sunday Special campaign?
Well, Sunday trading is not a devolved matter, and we are currently awaiting further details on the UK Government's proposals. But it's hugely important, of course, that the interests of those who work on a Sunday are protected and that the privileges that they enjoy now continue in the future.
It's obviously very disappointing to those who've been campaigning to keep Sunday Special, and particularly in relation to the 130,000 or so shop workers in Wales who had thought that the UK Government had pledged not to tackle to tamper with the Sunday trading laws, but they're now doing it through the back door, through the Enterprise Bill. What can the Welsh Government do to protect the family life of shop workers in Wales?
Well, we take the view this is an issue that should be devolved. We have argued for this to be devolved. We look forward to the response from the UK Government with regard to that. I can say that should these powers be devolved, we will consult with USDO, with local authorities, with businesses, with shop workers and the public, and we would listen to what they say and act accordingly.
William Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Noting what you said, First Minister, you'll acknowledge the majority of local authorities in the United Kingdom would rather like to have these powers so they could interpret them in the best way locally. Would you support such a move?
I believe that these powers should be devolved to the people of Wales. It's a matter then for this institution to decide where those powers should go, in the same way as is true of Scotland and Northern Ireland. I fail to see why Wales should be treated differently.
Question 2, Andrew R. Davies.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on Welsh Government action to address NHS waiting times in South Wales Central?
Well, we've set up the Planned Care programme, led by clinicians, to help develop sustainable services in NHS Wales. To assist this, we've invested an additional £45 million in 2015 to 16 to assist local health boards to deliver the improvements in waiting times set out in their integrated medium-term plans.
Thank you, First Minister, for that answer. We know under your First Minister's tenure, waiting times have doubled here in Wales. In South Wales Central, there is a particular issue around orthopaedics waiting times, and the BBC stats recently showed considerable waits for hips, for example, 197-day wait in Wales as opposed to 75 days in England. What comfort can you give to my constituents in South Wales Central as to what action the government will be taking to actually drive down waiting times so that when they do present at hospital, the consultant is in a position to give them a time that they can count on to have the procedure?
Well, let's look at A&E, for example. The number of people spending more than 12 hours in A&E departments in Wales has fallen, a 23% drop in December 2015 compared to the previous month. We know, however, that the number of people waiting for the same amount of time in England in A&E has doubled to 124,000 people, even, in 2 years. We know that delayed transfers of care are increasing in England. We know that diagnostic waiting times are dropping in Wales. We know that people are waiting less time for operations. And we know that, unlike in England, we don't have the chaos, the Cameron's chaos of a junior doctor strike.
Antonev.
First Minister, we know that one of the contributors to waiting lists is the impact upon adult social care, which the Tories would separate from the NHS. In England, the example is that there's been a 15% cut in spending on adult social care and a 100% increase in bed blogging, increasing from 50,000 a month to 100,000 a month. The Tories would decimate adult social care. Do you agree that the Welsh Government's position of supporting adult social care as part and parcel of NHS treatment contributes to better treatment and better outcomes for all?
Well, it's the tendency of the Tories in England to suggest that somehow there is no connection between health and social care.
Can you just calm down, please, and listen to the First Minister's reply? And that's you in particular, Darren Miller, so you needn't cheer. First Minister.
The Tories have a tendency to suggest that somehow there's no connection between health and social care. And so they have cut social care to the bone in England. They have offloaded the responsibility for providing social care to local authorities, so the poorest authorities will have the greatest problem in providing social care. We in Wales spend more per head on health and social services than England does, 7% more, and we will continue to look after those who need care the most.
Leanne Wood.
That's an interesting answer to that question, First Minister, because when Plaid Cymru talks about integrating health and social care services, Labour accuses us of wanting to abolish the NHS, which is a blatant lie. Now, First Minister, in some parts of South Wales Central, obtaining a GP appointment can be a long and drawn-out process. The issue is particularly acute in the northernmost parts of the Rhondda, where the Royal College of General Practitioners tell us that half of all GPs are nearing retirement. For members who are not aware, the Rhondda is in South Wales Central. Now, access to a GP has not been helped by the removal of the out-of-hours service in the Rhondda and Cynon. Now, when primary care is weak, there is an inevitable knock-on effect on hospitals by increasing the demand on waiting times and services. First Minister, you have previously admitted that you took your eye off the ball when it comes to education. Do you now admit that you've taken your eye off the ball with health and doctor recruitment too?
Well, the Leader of Plaid Cymru seems to think we're already into Leader's questions. I'm sure that she's aware we're still on question 2. But look, overall GP numbers in Wales have increased by 10.5% between 2004 and 2015. There are now over 2,000 GPs serving communities across Wales. We know, of course, that this is a global market when it comes to attracting doctors, and that's why, of course, we launched the targeted campaign called Make Your Future Part of Our Future, explaining why Wales, for example, is a great place to be a junior doctor. Where there are retirements, local health boards have plans in place. Where practices have decided to close their doors, salary GPs have been put in place instead. We've seen that, for example, in Betsy Cadwallader. And I don't, you know, in fairness, I don't accuse Plaid Cymru of trying to dismantle the NHS. You know, I know that they want to see an improved public health service, as we do. We don't agree with them in terms of the structure they want to impose, but nevertheless, we're in the same position in that regard. But we have more and more. We have 2,000 more GPs since 2004, and they are serving our communities well.
Howard.
First Minister, there is a big discrepancy between the referral to diagnostic testing time between cancer patients on the urgent route to the non-urgent route. And I wonder what additional support could the Welsh Government put in place for primary care to make sure that when GPs are making this decision between urgent and non-urgent referrals, that they are confident that they're making both safe and appropriate decisions?
Well, I don't see this as a particular issue in South Wales Central, but nevertheless, it's right to say that more GPs are referring people at an early stage, quite naturally, if they suspect that cancer might be present. For the vast majority of people, of course, that isn't the case, but the referral is made anyway. That diagnosis then is made usually within 22 days, although for some cancers it can be more difficult to try and identify what the problem is. Pancreatic cancer is a particular issue, as we know, because of the symptoms can be so general and can mimic the symptoms of other illnesses. But we know, of course, that we outperform England when it comes to the 31-day target for, or the 31-day timetable for urgent cancers and the 62-day timetable for non-urgent cancers, and we intend to make sure that continues to be the case in the future.
We now move to questions from the party leaders, and first this afternoon, Leader of the Welsh Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, at the last National Assembly elections, my party said that we would provide more money for schools by targeting additional monies at pupils who need it most. Today's budget means that the pupil premium will be worth £1,150 per pupil in April, thanks to the Welsh Liberal Democrats. And the recent Estyn report said that that is making a material difference to those children. To qualify for this support, First Minister, parents must register for free school meals. What work will your government undertake to ensure that every child who needs this support will receive this help?
Well, I'm not aware of this being a particular issue. It's important, of course, that schools are able to communicate with parents so that parents are aware of the sport that is available to them, and LEAs, of course, have a responsibility to do the same thing.
First Minister, it is an issue. Some families believe that there is a stigma in making an application for free school meals, and they should be assured that it is not only in their interest, but in their pupils' school's interest to make that application. It will make a material difference to their children's school's budget. But the budget this afternoon will also deliver additional funding for the health service. And as with schools funding, that will only be worthwhile if it makes a material difference to the outcome for people. What impact will you expect for patients in Wales, and what fresh and new ideas do you have to make sure that the additional resources going into the NHS make a genuine difference to patients' experiences?
Well, first of all, can I recognise what she said about free school meals and suggest a way forward? I know there are some schools in Wales who have pioneered plastic cards, which are preloaded with money for some pupils, but which, of course, can be used without money preloaded for those on free school meals. No one knows the difference. That's the important thing. When I was in school, those with free school meals had a different coloured dinner ticket, as we call them. Those days, thankfully, hopefully, are largely gone. But that's one way, of course, of removing that stigma, which the leader of the Liberal Democrats is quite right, still exists. When it comes to health, of course, we want to see delivery. We want to see diagnostic waiting times continue to go down, A&E waits continue to go down, waiting times for operations continue to go down, to see the timetables that we put in place for cancer treatments improve, to see ambulance response times continue to improve as well. It is important, of course, that as more money goes in, that so people can see the outputs being delivered at the end.
What are the part of the NHS that we know really does frustrate people, and a problem that you promised action on in this government is accessing their GP when they want it? For many people, a 3-week wait for a GP appointment is not uncommon. Will you look at Welsh Liberal Democrat plans to invest in a properly funded access to GP scheme that would incentivise GPs to broaden the primary healthcare team so that they only see people that they need to see? And would you accept that spending money on expensive locum cover to provide support when a GP retires is not an efficient use of NHS money?
Well, first of all, there's a difference between a locum and a salaried GP.
I know.
The reality is that most GPs now are looking at the salaried model more favourably than the contractor model. They want the flexibility. They don't want to be tied down to one practice for the rest of their working lives. They're not interested in buying into a practice. And more GPs want to have the flexibility of being salaried. That's not the same as being a locum. You don't have to buy in as a partner into a practice in order to be seen as a proper GP. So in terms of access to GPs, it does vary, that's true. There are some GP surgeons in Wales where appointments can be made and the doctor's seen that day. I know it because I see it in my own area. There are others who are not as efficient. There is a challenge there, and we have improved, of course, the situation with regard to people being able to access GPs at evenings and at weekends. But there is a challenge there for some GP practices to catch up with the best practice of others. There is no reason in the future why there should be that level of discrepancy. We are talking about independent contractors, but that discussion will continue to make sure that what has been delivered so far in terms of access on evenings and weekends continues in the future.
We now move to Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Archie-Davis.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. First Minister, the budget is laid for debate this afternoon, and flowing from that budget, the draft local government settlement has been laid also for consideration. I see on the forward outlook that the date for that to come to the Assembly to be voted on is March the 8th. Are you confident that that draft settlement that has been made available to local authorities, the length and breadth of Wales, will be the settlement we will be voting on here on March the 8th? Or do you see that there will be changes to mitigate for the devastating impact of some of those cuts to rural authorities?
Despite the Tory cuts that have been imposed on us over the last 5 years, we are confident that the local government settlement will be fair in that context.
So I take it from that that will be the settlement that we will be voting on March the 8th, and there will be no leveller, stabiliser put in for local authorities such as Powys, such as Ceredigion, such as Pembrokeshire or Monmouthshire that do face draconian cutbacks in their services, up to 4% for Powys. Another thing you've got in your budget, First Minister, is higher education, and 32% cuts to higher education here in Wales are being made by your government if this budget passes. That will put a dramatic amount of pressure on part-time courses, on access to higher education, and above all, research research in universities. We know there is less money around, but what will your government be doing to assist universities, making sure that there is access to universities for students from deprived backgrounds, there is support for university-based research, and there is support for part-time courses, given that you have chosen to cut 32% out of the support to higher education?
The Leader of the Opposition is trying to prejudge the budget statement, and I'm not going to be tempted into that. He'll have to wait and see what's announced in the draft final budget. I have to say to him that he has declared that he wishes to see local government cut by 12%. He's declared it. There's no getting away from it. It's there in writing. In the document that his party produced as an alternative draft budget. And he has not changed his position since then. I mean, when he was asked this question on the radio, he said, we haven't crunched the numbers yet. So, well, it's up to him. It's not his question, I understand that. But there will come a time when the people of Wales will want to know what cuts his party proposes to make to local government. He can't run from that question forever. At the moment, it's 12%. That's the cut he wants. That's an equivalent of a 38% increase in council tax. The second thing he mentions is higher education. Well, he wants to triple tuition fees for students, to impose a tax on students along the same lines as England. We've seen the cuts in higher education in England. We are not going to sell our students down the river, and we are not going to put our students in a position where they leave college with enormous levels of debt. That's exactly what his party and he wants to do.
You've offered no answers whatsoever, First Minister. You refer back to a budget that was offered before the electorate in 2011. I accept. You won that election. You formed the government. We are now in 2016. If our budget had come forward, there would not have been £1 billion worth of cuts to the Welsh NHS that you are rapidly trying to backpedal. I welcome a sinner repenteth and coming over to us, coming over to our line of protecting the health budget. Well done to you, First Minister. But I've asked you legitimate questions today on the budget that will be before us later. And in that budget, you have also got an increase in your central services budget of £7.5 million. Yet you're taking £32 million out of HE. That is a fact. That is there in black and white. So why do you need £7.5 million in the central services budget as an increase for you being a government, yet you're prepared to take 32% out of HE, and you're not prepared to invest in local service delivery by rural authorities?
As I said to him, the budget statement will come later, and there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the appropriate time. It wouldn't be right for the statement to be prejudged. But I have to say to him, he keeps on saying that the figures I refer to are old. Fine. Where are the up-to-date figures? There aren't any. There aren't any. And so again, I remind people, 12% cut in local government, 12% cut in education, 30% cut in economy and transport, huge cuts in housing, huge cuts in central services. He talks about £1 billion cut from the health service. It's not true, because we know, of course, we spend more on health than England does for health. So we know that's clearly untrue. And he never says, if he had spent another billion, where did it come from? Because in the cloud cuckoo land that exists over that part of the chamber, money grows on trees. Now, there's no question of making difficult decisions. There's no question of having to make cuts in order to pay for priorities. Money grows on trees. £1 billion can be found at the drop of a hat. The reality is the people of Wales need to have a prudent and realistic government, and not one, as the opposition would be, that is away with the fairies.
We now move to the Leader of Plaid Cymru, Liam Wood.
Diolch, Llywydd. A fortnight ago, First Minister, I asked you to reverse your plans to make savage cuts to the funding of our universities. You declined, and you essentially told universities to put up with those cuts. Now, you further rejected claims that there would be job losses as a result of those cuts to the university sector. Can you confirm now this afternoon that there won't be a last-minute U-turn on university funding when your budget is presented later on?
That will become clear when the budget is presented.
Well, that's an interesting answer, First Minister, and I'm not quite sure whether or not this means that you continue to be in denial about the impact of your proposal. So perhaps some evidence from Cardiff University might be helpful to you. They said, and I quote, in 2015-16, HEFCO has prioritised direct funding to universities to help sustain undergraduate medicine and dentistry. 2015-16 already saw a 50% reduction in HEFCO funding for this provision. Further erosion or loss of this funding will put at risk the education of doctors and dentists within Wales for Wales. These subjects cost more than £15,000 per student per year and clearly cannot be delivered from the residual fee of £6,230 alone. At a time when the health budget is being increased, reducing investment in the next generation of doctors and dentists would be contradictory. Cardiff University, therefore, believes that there will be far-reaching consequences to your cuts to the higher education sector. Do you accept that?
No, and Cardiff University is not the only university in Wales. It also has £300 million of the reserves. Now, I don't think it's unreasonable when a sector has £1.3 billion in reserves in total that they have to manage what will be small decreases in their budgets. Cardiff alone has £300 million. So, yes, it is challenging. It was challenging for further education last year. Yes. It's been challenging across government. But it's not asking too much for higher education, with their income having expanded significantly since 2012, to be able to manage what is, in the context of things, quite a small budget cut.
First Minister, Cardiff University is not the only university in Wales, and not all universities have the same levels of reserves as Cardiff University might have. I reiterate to you today, First Minister, drop those planned cuts. Support Welsh education, support a secure future for our NHS service. You are consistently refusing to give us a vision for higher education in this country. Why? Because you don't have one, do you? The only thing that we have had confirmed is that you want to make a £41 million cut, which is a 32% cut to Welsh universities. Why are you meting out Tory cuts to a sector that this country relies upon for its future prosperity as well as its future health professionals?
Well, unless the Leader of Plaid Cymru is a crystal ball, she has no way of knowing what's going to be in the budget statement. And that's...
Order! Order!
Well...
Order! Order! First Minister.
Well, the shouting in that regard gives it away, doesn't it? The statement is later. That's when you get the answers, okay? The statement is later. And there will be a debate. You'll get the chance to ask those questions then. The reality is, from your point of view, I can tell you there are many in the university sector who disagree with the tuition fee grant and with your proposals, which is to make sure that people who stay in Wales get their fees paid, which is what you've always said in the past. Well, it's not. Right, so it's not Plaid Cymru's policy. Well, we'll wait to see what... I mean, you know, I am accused of not having a vision for universities, and now we don't know what on earth Plaid Cymru's policy actually is. The budget statement will make it absolutely clear. If you had not ruled yourselves out of the budget discussions at the very beginning, you might have had a say in all this.
Thank you. Leaders' questions are now finished, and we now move back to questions on the paper. Question 3 is Lindsay Whittle.
What is the current Welsh Government policy on funding for hospices in Wales, please?
Well, we continue to support the development of end-of-life and specialist palliative care services, including hospices in Wales, and that includes £3 million worth of funding to support the new St David's Hospice in Newport.
Thank you for your answer, First Minister. Could you please explain why, over the past 5 years, Welsh Government funding for hospices in Wales has fallen from 24% of their running cost to just 19%? Now, surely, despite any stress on budgets, and I know it is tough, such a vital service provided by hospices surely must be safeguarded and not threatened. And I would urge you to reconsider that. It would be extremely costly for the NHS if any of the charities went into liquidation due to lack of funding, as most of the service delivery would need to be picked up through our core NHS services.
Well, the fact that we're funding the hospice in Newport is a sign of our commitment. We are the only country in the UK to provide 24/7 support and advice to health professionals caring for people approaching the end of their lives. Since 2008, we've invested £6.4 million annually in end-of-life and specialist palliative care services in Wales, An additional 1 million was announced in 2015 to 16 to support the delivery of the end-of-life care plan, in addition to that funding, and over £900,000 of that new money will be used to expand hospice at-home provision across Wales. The remaining money will be used to fund end-of-life care initiatives such as advanced care planning and public awareness-raising events.
Altaf Hussain.
Yay. Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, on the same day that Marie Curie launched her daffodil appeal, we are debating a draft budget that will see £250,000 removed from hospice support. Hospices are essential, as you said, part of Wales, end-of-life care. The focus of modern hospice care is on helping people to live well until they die. We need to ensure that regardless of where you live in Wales, you'll be able to access hospices care. Therefore, First Minister, will you ensure that hospices receive sustainable funding?
Yes, which is why I refer to the point I made earlier on, that we have ensured that funding remains. We have put extra money into to care, and we haven't cut funding for social care as the Members' Party has done in England. Social care has been absolutely hammered in England. We know that the responsibility has been passed on to local authorities who are ill-placed to fund that social care. We will not do that in Wales, and we will continue to fund social care at the level people expect.
Question 4, Gwenda Thomas.
Diolch Llywydd. Will the First Minister make a statement on the development of businesses that export?
Yes, increasing exports from Wales is a key priority for the Welsh Government. We offer a range of measures to support Welsh exporters at each stage of their export journey, including free one-to-one advice, help to find new customers, and help to access overseas markets.
Thank you for that, First Minister. I note that the Exporting is Great tour comes to Wales this month and will assist companies in developing their exports to Europe and the rest of the world. Do you agree with me, First Minister, that if we leave the European Union, trading with this economic bloc will be made far more difficult?
There's no question about it. I mean, we've all seen the difficulties that the Prime Minister has had in negotiating a new settlement thus far. And I support his position that he wants us to stay in the EU. I mean, no one else in his party seems to. They've not been very vocal about it, but I support his position. The reality is that if we don't get access to the European market that is tariff-free and open, Welsh business will suffer. The idea that if the UK left the EU would fall over itself to put forward a favourable deal for the UK is madness, frankly. It just isn't going to happen. Why on earth would the European Union want to do that for a UK that had just left the European Union? So, from my point of view, certainty is important for business. The Prime Minister made the point the Scottish referendum created uncertainty in Scotland. It did. The same thing is happening with this referendum. The fact that there is going to be a referendum is creating uncertainty in the UK. It needs to be resolved, although June is not clearly my preferred date, nor others in the Chamber either. But the reality is, if you have access to a market of 500 million, if you can sell to those people, anything you do to interfere with that access is bound to be bad for manufacturers, for tourism and for farmers.
I had occasion to have a chat with you last week, Andrew Archie Davis. Please don't keep muttering. If you want to speak, well, I will call you. Mark Isherwood.
Thank you. Well, the latest Welsh Government published figures for exports to the third quarter of 2015 show that in the year to the third quarter of 2015, 6 of the 12 UK nations and regions saw an increase in exports, but Wales had the second largest fall at 8.6%, rising to 16.8% with trade and exports to other EU countries. How, therefore, do you respond to the statement in the CBI Business Manifesto for the 2016 Assembly election that the Welsh Government should develop enhanced export support for medium-sized businesses?
Well, the reduction is down to petroleum, which is a significant amount of exports for us. Whenever there is a slowdown in the refineries or the loss of a refinery, it does affect our export figures. We've seen that in the past. But the UK is not performing particularly well. I mean, we've already seen George Osborne get his excuses in already, saying, well, if things go badly, it's all the fault of China and all the fault of the world economy. Well, the reality is this, that we export nearly half of what we manufacture and produce to the European Union. To lose access to that market is a disaster for business and for our economy. The converse is that the European Union only exports 10% of what it produces to the UK. We are far more reliant on our export market in the EU than the other way around. And it's important that we remember, as we look to the referendum that will take place now this year, that what is at stake here is hundreds and thousands of jobs in Wales. And the decision should be taken based on a dose of economic reality and not on some kind of wild-eyed nationalism.
Rhys Iorwerth?
Diolch ni licio tynnu sylw at y berthynas rhwng polisi caffael ag allforion. Mi fydd y Prif Weinidog yn ymwybodol am wedi bod yn galw am gymryd camau i gynyddu'r gyfran o gytundebau cyhoeddus yng Nghymru sy'n mynd i gwmnïau Cymraeg ac y byddai Llywodraeth Plaid Cymru'n deddfu i symud i'r cyfeiriad yma. Ydy'r Prif Weinidog yn cytuno bod hybu cwmnïau Cymraeg drwy helpu sicrhau y rhagor o gytundebau cyhoeddus yn fodd i sicrhau bod y cwmnïau yna wedyn yn cryfhau, yn datblygu ni gallu nhw i allforio ag y bydda'r economi Gymraeg yn y ffordd yna yn ennill ddwywaith.
Yeah, wel, mae hwnna wedi digwydd, wrth gwrs. Mae yna lot fawr o gwmnïau nawr yn cael y cyfle i fudo am gytundebau. Llawer mwy o gwmnïau o Gymru nawr yn gallu cael cytundebau gymaru beth oedd ar gael o'r blaen. Beth allai ddim cytuno gyda fe arno yw deddfu ar hwn. Dwi ddim yn gyfreithlon i roi targedau cyfreithiol ynglyn â faint o busnes dyle cael ei roi i gwmnïau lleol. Mae'n hollol yn erbyn cyfraith Ewropeaidd. So, beth sy'n bwysig yw sicrhau bod ni'n cario ymlaen i hybu cwmnïau mwyn bod nhw mewn sefyllfa i gymryd mantes o'r cytundebau pan maen nhw'n dod.
Peter Black.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, my region faces potential economic devastation with the loss of many hundreds of jobs at Tartar Steel. And of course, the membership of the European community is actually absolutely crucial in terms of trying to regenerate that particular area. Can you confirm what work your government is doing with Europe to try to mitigate those losses and to try to develop new export-led industries in the Port Talbot area?
We've been in correspondence with the European Commission, putting forward our view very strongly that there need to be stronger tariff barriers against imports from outside. We are in the process of putting together a financial package which of itself will not be enough. It will need to be supported by a bigger financial package from the UK government, and that process is ongoing.
Question 5, Mohammed Ashkar.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. What support is the Welsh Government giving to help pancreatic cancer patients in Wales, please?
Well, as part of the Cancer Delivery Plan, the Cancer Implementation Group is taking forward a number of pieces of work which will improve the recognition of symptoms for cancer, such as pancreatic cancer, and once symptoms are identified, to enable rapid access to testing, diagnosis and treatment.
Thank you for the reply, First Minister. Pancreatic cancer has the worst survival rate of the 21 most common cancers in Wales. National Institute of Care and Excellence has said that the cancer drug Abraxane should not be funded by the NHS in England due to the cost. Will the First Minister assure pancreatic cancer sufferers in Wales that this life-extending drug will continue to be available on NHS in Wales?
Yes, it was recently agreed, for example, that we will continue with discussions with the manufacturer to explore the options for continued access to Abraxane within NHS Wales, and the Abraxane will continue to be available in Wales in the interim.
Question 6, Jonathan Saunders.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on mental health services in North Wales?
Yes, on the 29th of January, the Deputy Minister published the improvement framework for Betsy Cadwaladr, and that sets out our expectations for improvement in each of the areas identified under special measures, including mental health.
Thank you. Support and access to services for under 18-year-olds experiencing severe mental health problems is seen as almost inaccessible in my own constituency of Aberconwy, with young sufferers having to wait for up to 2 years to access CAMS. Such a delay at such a very vulnerable time in the life of our youngsters is quite unacceptable, First Minister. And although there has been a recent review into CAMS, it has certainly not made an halfpenny worth of difference to my sufferers in Aberconwy or made any change. Indeed, Conwy County Borough Council cannot even access figures of those requiring treatment and intervention by CAMS. Minister, this is a huge failing on the part of your government. and you are letting our most vulnerable youngsters down at a time, you know, when they are really troubled. What are you doing to address this, please?
Well, we've provided CAMS with an 18% increase in funding, as the member will know. £7.6 million. The Service Change and Development Programme is being supported by Professor Dame Sue Bailey, and there will be the recruitment of an additional 130 members of staff who will improve services and reduce waiting times over time.
Thank you. Bethan Jenkins.
Prif Weinidog, oedd rhywun tu allan i etholaeth wedi cysylltu gyda fi I helpu nhw gyda achos oherwydd nhw'n gwybod bod fi wedi neud lot ar iechyd meddwl, a ddyfenw yma wedi bod yn aros am 4 mlynedd ac wedi dweud wrth ei GP fod I eisiau cyflawni hunan laddiad, a dim hond nes I fi fel aelod cynulliad codi hyn gyda'r GP yn lleol, oedd unrhyw beth wedi symud o ran help iddi hi. Nawr, gallai hwnna wedi fod yn stori yn y wasg lle bod hi wedi cyflawni yr hyn nad oedd neb yn yr ystafell yma eisiau ei gwneud. Pa fath o waith ydych chi'n gwneud gyda GPs? Dim I ofyn iddyn nhw I gael y fforddiant, yn I orfodi nhw I gael y fforddiant yn hynny o beth, fel na fydd na fwy o tragediau yn digwydd yng Nghymru, lle bod pobl ddim yn derbyn y triniaeth maen nhw angen mewn da bryd.
Wel, ynglyn â gogledd, bydd yr arian y gogledd yn cael ei ddefnyddio arian ychwanegol ynglyn â sicrhau bod triniaeth seicolegol ar gael yn gloiach, a hefyd ymyrraeth cynnar ynglyn â sicrhau bod psychosis yn cael ei ddelio gyda, a hefyd wrth gwrs I gyllido gwasanaeth argyfwng I blant a bobl ifanc yn enwedig yn yr adrannau argyfwng yn yr ysbytau. So felly, bydd yr ariannau, yn sôn am yr ariannau I Betsi Cadwaladau, ond wy'n erbyn hwnna wrth gwrs I gael ei wneud ar draws Cymru, bydd hwnna'n sicrhau bod gwasanaethau ar gael yn gyflymach na falle oedd yn wir o'r blaen, ac wrth gwrs bydd yna fwy o bobl ar gael I roi'r cyngor yna a roi'r help yna pam eisiau.
Aled Roberts.
Diolch Llywydd. Prif Weinidog, ydych chi wedi cyfeirio at ymyrraeth cynnar. Ma'ch gweinidog addysg chi wedi cydnabod pwysigrwydd seicolegwyr addysg wrth sicrhau bod y cwrs hyfforddi yng Nghaerdydd yn parhau. Hefyd yn symud at gyfnod o ddeddf newydd o ran addysg arbennig felly. Gai ofyn I chi felly, mae yna broblemau'n codi yn y gogledd ynglyn â anghysondeb rhwng awdurdodau ynglyn â y ffaith bod yna quota yn cael ei roi I ysgolion, faint o oriau mae seicolegwyr addysg yn cael defnyddio ym mhob ysgol. Dwi wedi edrych I fewn iddo, does na ddim adolygiad I bod ers 2004 I fewn i'r sefyllfa yng Nghymru pan rhoddwyd cyfrifoldeb i'r awdurdodau addysg, a fyddwch chi'n barod I ail-edrych a creu adolygiad o'r newydd fel bod ni'n gallu ystyried hwn fel rhan o'r ddeddfwriaeth newydd.
Na I ysgrifennu'r aelod ynglyn â hwnna. Mae'n bwysig dros ben wrth gwrs bod yna gysondeb yn enwedig yn y system addysg, a na fi'n siŵr bod fi'n ysgrifennu at yr aelod gyda safbwynt y Llywodraeth ar hyn o bryd.
Question 7, Wyn Price.
Thank you, Llywyd. Will the First Minister make a statement on the progress the NHS has made towards the Welsh Government's stroke delivery plan?
Well, the stroke annual report published last month demonstrates the progress made in delivering the plan. It does include increased awareness raising, appropriate interventions, improved hospital care, and improved discharge and rehab services. And these actions have helped to improve survival rates following a stroke and to reduce longer-term disabilities.
Well, thank you for that answer, First Minister. The recent publications of the Third All Wales Annual Report Stroke shows that 1,000 fewer people are dying from stroke every year than 10 years ago. What does this tell us about the continued dedication of NHS staff and the role they play in delivering this service?
It tells us a huge amount, and I thank the member for the question. We have an excellent track record of participating in the National Stroke Audits run by the Royal College of Physicians. We have a system of intelligent targets so that data is readily accessible to clinicians who can then make improvements to stroke services at a local level. Our paramedics, of course, are highly skilled in the rapid identification of stroke patients, and, of course, our nursing staff have been working very hard to make sure that those who present at hospital who've had strokes are offered treatment as rapidly as possible, because we know that that has a huge impact on their ability not just to survive, but to avoid long-term disability.
Darren Miller.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It is indeed very welcome that there have been improvements in stroke outcomes in Wales, but unfortunately we're still at the bottom of the UK league table, even though we've made that progress. What additional support are you going to be able to provide to Welsh Health Boards so that they can get up to at least the UK average, and if not beyond that, over the next few years?
Well, working with the voluntary sector particularly, that's important to help those who have been victims of stroke, but also, of course, to help to improve early diagnosis. We have, for example, the what's called the FAST process, face, arm, speech test, which enables call takers and ambulance control to identify people who may have had a stroke early so the paramedics can get to them early, and then, of course, to ensure that they get to clinicians having used, of course, the information that they've received through the audit process. It's also true to say that our multidisciplinary teams of stroke clinicians and stroke service managers have led the way in planning improvements to services, and that's why we see, of course, outcomes improving.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywydd, ac wy'n croesawu'r ffaith bod yna cynnydd wedi wneud yng Nghymru yn gyffredinol ar y mater yma, bod yna camu yn ôl dros y 20 mis diwetha fel mae'n digwydd yn bwrdd iechyd hawl dda, ond ni gyd eisiau gweld gwelliant yn pobl yn gofesgyn stroc. Ond, drwy'n wneud hynny wrth gwrs, mae pobl yn mwy o anghenion gofal yn ystod y misoedd sy'n dilyn stroc, ac mae lot o'r feic yna yn cwmpo a gwasanaethau cymdeithasol gymaint ac mae'n cwmpo ar y gwasanaeth iechyd. Felly, beth ydych chi'n wneud i sicrhau bod gyda ni gwell adroddiadau ar ôl 6 mis na sydd gennym ni hyn o bryd ynglyn â ffordd mae pobl yn delio gyda sgil effeithiau stroc?
Beth gyntaf, wrth gwrs, yw sicrhau bod diagnosis yn gyflym, bod paramedics yn gallu mynd i'r person yn gyflym iawn a mynd i uned arbennig ynglyn â stroc i sicrhau bod nhw'n cael y triniaeth mor gyntaf a sy'n bosib trwy defnyddio'r cyffuriau a'r trwy gofal maen nhw'n gallu cael. Ond wrth gwrs, un o'r pethau sy'n effeithio bobl weithio gyda stroc yw mae'n effeithio i meddwl nhw. A effeithio'r ffordd maen nhw'n ystyried bywyd, mae ysbryd rwy'n gallu cwmpo. A felly mae'n bwysig dros ben bod nhw'n cael yr help seicolegol a chymdeithasol yna mwyn bod nhw'n gallu helpu ar y daith i ddod yn well unwaith eto. So felly, gweithio gyda teuluoedd, gweithio gyda trydydd sector, fi sôn amdano hwnna yn barod, mwyn sicrhau bod yna system cynhwysfawr o gwmpas nhw i helpu nhw i ddod yn well. Mae'r triniaeth meddygol yn bwysig, ond wrth gwrs, yna'r cam cynta, bwysig wedi wrth gwrs bod ni'n gweithio gyda'r trydydd sector a hefyd gyda teuluoedd mwyn sicrhau bod y gwellhad yn gallu barhau yn y pen draw.
Question 8, Nick Ramsey.
Thank you. Will the First Minister provide an update on the support available to communities affected by the development of solar farms?
Well, these are matters, of course, for the local planning authority, but of course we would encourage any developer to consider best practice around community involvement, around supply chain opportunities and benefit arrangements so that communities can benefit most.
Thank you, First Minister. Construction work on a 38,000 panel solar farm has started just outside the village of Llanfapley in my constituency. The developer Conergy have had minimal discussions with the community to date to discuss community benefits and have proven extremely difficult to contact and communicate with. What support is the Welsh Government able to offer communities across Wales during the negotiation period for community benefits to ensure that they are not shortchanged and receive the full entitlement of benefit they are owed under the Register of Community and Economic Benefits?
It would be much easier for us as a government to be able to facilitate this if the community infrastructure levy was devolved. It's not. The difficulty is that, as a member will be aware, Section 106 is the current procedure for ensuring community benefits, but it bumps up against the silt. And as a result of that, it puts limits on what we can do to encourage community benefit. Now, my view is, and the government's view is, that silt is a planning levy and should be devolved. That's not the view of the UK government. It's unfortunate because it means we can't have a comprehensive approach to developing a policy on community benefits through Section 106 and through a silt replacement that we would like.
William Powell.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, last summer saw the opening of the first Welsh local authority owned and run solar farm in Wrexham. Much of the groundwork was done under the leadership of my friend and colleague Aled Roberts. The farm has nearly 9,000 solar panels over 43 acres and has the effect of reducing Wrexham's carbon footprint by 1,300 tonnes of CO2 per year. As with the not-for-profit Robin Hood Energy Company, which has been rolled out in Nottinghamshire, I would argue that both facilities show the opportunity that renewable energy offers communities and local authorities working in partnership. First Minister, do you agree with me that we should work towards a greater rollout of such partnerships between local communities and principal local authorities, and what can the Welsh Government do concretely to facilitate this?
Yes, I do. I mean, the member makes it sound as if his colleague Aled Roberts is physically digging the holes for the new the new facility. That would be something that would go beyond the normal duties of an Assembly member. Would be something I'd commend to other members if that was to be the case. But the member's right. We have an EIR course, which is important in terms of helping community energy schemes, because we know that they have great potential not just to contribute to renewable energy, not just to contribute to a reduction in our carbon footprint, but to put money into local economies as well. So through schemes such as an EIR, and if we were to get the Silk devolved as well, we would then have a full range of options to promote those kinds of schemes further.
Thank you, First Minister. I have agreed an urgent question under Standing Order 12.66, and I call on Mick Antony to ask the question.
What discussions has the First Minister had with the UK Government regarding the trade union bill in the light of the letter from the UK Minister of State for Skills on progressing the bill in Wales?
Well, this is a bill that is a direct political attack on trade unions and those who are represented in the workplace by them. It will come as no surprise to members that we are opposed to the trade union bill. When it comes to the devolved areas, we have made it clear to the UK Government that we take the view that in devolved public services, matters to do with trade union membership are a matter for this Government and not the UK Government.
Thank you, First Minister. The letter raises very serious, important constitutional issues that I believe you need to give serious consideration to. If I might read the relevant piece of the letter that has been disclosed, it says, "We have sought legal advice from First Treasury Counsel, who has confirmed that we have a very weak case in relation to Wales." They are confirming the Welsh advice, the legal advice from the Welsh TUC, and just about every other body, and totally contradict the position adopted even by the leader of the Welsh Conservatives. My concern, First Minister, is this. For any government minister to proceed with this legislation in Westminster on the basis that they seek to apply it to Wales in the knowledge of that legal advice and opinion would be an abuse of ministerial office. It would be a matter, if disclosed, that would be a resignation issue for any minister to raise. And it is also a devastating blow to the protocols agreed between the Welsh Government and the UK Government in respect of the devolution settlement. It blows it out of the water. Can I ask, First Minister, that because of the seriousness of these issues, that you will raise this matter directly with the Prime Minister, because the danger is that the constitutional settlement between us is not only off the road, it is in serious risk of meltdown and has serious consequence for the future relationship of Wales and the United Kingdom.
Well, I'd agree with much of what the member has said. What is absolutely clear, and it's worth quoting this again, that when it comes to the trade union bill, the UK Government sought advice from First Treasury Counsel, who has, and I quote, confirmed that we, the UK Government, have a strong case that these provisions are reserved in relation to Scotland, but a very weak case in relation to Wales. That undermines the position they've taken constantly. I had a letter on the 2nd of October from the Prime Minister. It does predate this leaked letter, but that letter says, in regard to devolved responsibilities, as the Minister of State for Skills set out in his correspondence to you the 15th of July, the bill relates to employment rights, duties and industrial relations, all of which are clearly reserved matters. There are two questions here. Had the Prime Minister seen this advice before he sent this letter, in which case the letter is misleading? Or had he not seen the advice, in which case why was he reckless enough to put forward a position that is clearly shaky? I think the people of Wales deserve answers in that regard. But ultimately, of course, we should remember that this is a piece of legislation that directly affects the position of working people in Wales. It is a direct political attack on the trades unions, and it's quite clear once again that what we see in Whitehall is Cameron's chaos.
Andrew Archie Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Obviously, the new strapline from the Labour front bench is Cameron's chaos, because we've heard that in First Minister's question.
Order.
Can quickly turn that into Carwyn's chaos, and when we look week in, week out, we can see that straight away.
Too late.
Can we stick to the urgent
question? The issue
question?
for the First Minister is that there is a difference of opinion here. There was a manifesto commitment, a clear manifesto commitment on behalf of the Conservatives that was voted on, and the government in Westminster is a majority Conservative government. There are strongly held views within this chamber and within the government, and I think those views need to be respected and understood, and the dialogue needs to be had. How is the First Minister going to take forward those views and those discussions with the Westminster government, who do have a manifesto commitment to legislate in this area and clearly mapped out how they would affect that legislation when they brought it forward? It's not a case where it was a one line in the manifesto. It clearly mapped out how the government, if elected, would legislate in this area. So what we need to do is make sure that we can get that communication working at both ends of the M4 to get a clear understanding of how this can progress.
There is communication, and the line of the UK government is we're going to ignore everything and move ahead anyway. That's their idea of dialogue. If you want an example of negotiation with the UK government, this is what we're doing, tough luck. That's what negotiation means for the UK government. Look, the reality is the UK government was not elected on the basis that it would change terms and conditions in devolved public services. If you can show me that in your manifesto, I'm interested to see it. And that was put in the manifesto despite the fact that it was known that the Agricultural Sector Wages Bill had extended the powers of this Assembly. If it's bad drafting by your party, you have to explain that. Your party did not win the support of the people of Wales in May, in Wales. True to say that you have the support across the UK, but the reality is you do not have support to change terms and conditions in devolved public services in Wales. People have not supported that. We will not support that. The advice given to your own party doesn't support that, and yet your ministers keep on peddling this myth that somehow they are on good ground when they claim that this isn't devolved. The legal advice through this leaked letter makes it crystal clear that the advice given to the UK government is that they have a very weak case in suggesting that this is not devolved, and we will continue to do all that we can to make sure that this bill is defeated and that the clauses that refer to devolved public services are removed in time by this institution elected by the people of Wales. But isn't it incredible that we have, I think there's a word for it, chutzpah, that is displayed by the UK government, where they claim that this is a clearly reserved matter when the legal advice they themselves have received is exactly the opposite. What more have they been hiding from us?
Bethan Jenkins.
Thank you, and I look forward to all the Conservative Party members rushing to buy their first copy of the Socialist Worker, where this letter was leaked to. But on a serious level, obviously, following on from what Mick Antonever said, this would rely on Wales currently this being implemented in Wales not adopting reserved powers model. However, the UK government admits it cannot politically offer something to Wales that it doesn't offer to Scotland. What is your assessment of the concession being talked about in the leaked letter, and how do you intend to take reserved powers forward in light of this letter and in light of the Supreme Court judgment?
Well, it's right to say that the current Wales bill would remove the ability of this Assembly to legislate on the trade union bill. That's why, of course, in that respect and many, many other respects, it rolls back devolution, and something, of course, that all parties, in fairness, in this chamber have been reluctant to accept. I mean, it is concerning that they can only see Wales through the prism of Scotland. That somehow you can't give something to Wales unless it's also an offer to Scotland. It doesn't play the other way around. It does show you how anti-Wales this UK government is. That it can't actually do something for Wales without looking through the prism of Scotland. And this letter lays bare what their position is with regard to Wales. The devolution settlement, the devolution settlement in Wales happens as a result of the Agricultural Sector Wages Bill to be broader than the devolution settlement in Scotland in this regard. And that is one of the reasons why we have the Wales Bill as it is, because they are desperate to roll back the powers of this Assembly elected by the people of Wales. If it was only the case, just for once, that the Conservatives in this chamber took the side of Wales rather than their colleagues, then that would be a step forward.
Peter Black.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, I agree with most of what Mick Anthony said as well. And I think it's quite clear in the letter and the legal advice that the government is talking about introducing a statutory obligation for the UK ministers to consult with the Welsh ministers in terms of certain clauses on this bill, but it doesn't actually say whether or not you would have a veto on those particular clauses. It's actually in the bottom of the page headed e-balloting, if you're looking for that particular clause. First Minister, can I ask whether it is your intention now, in the light of this legal advice, to go back to the UK government and say to them that if they are proceeding with this bill as it is currently drafted, and I personally don't think it would get through the House of Lords as it currently is, that if they are proceeding with this, that a statutory obligation to consult is not sufficient, that there should be a statutory right for the Welsh Assembly and the Welsh Government to veto particular clauses in respect of Wales?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, our position as a government is we don't want to see the trade union bill at all.
Well, yeah.
But given the fact, and it's right to say that the UK government has a mandate to take it forward through the UK Parliament, what it does not have is a mandate to change the terms and conditions of those working in devolved public services in Wales that are within the remit of the Welsh Government. There is no mandate for that. Consultation is not enough. We take the view that devolved public services are just that they fall within the remit of the Welsh Government, and that the UK Government has no role in that regard. That's what the people of Wales have voted for twice, in 1997 and in 2011. And so once again, we know their position is weak. I will be liaising, and the Minister will be liaising with the UK Government, using this letter, obviously, as supporting evidence to say, look, your own legal advice shows that you're in a very weak position. Our view is this is devolved. Respect devolution in Wales.
David Ellis-Thomas.
Fel fy nes i glywed, mae'n debyg dylwn ni ddatgan diddordeb oherwydd mod i wedi pleidleisio yn erbyn rhannau allweddol o'r bil yma yn ail di Senedd San Steffan, a gobeithio bydd yna gyfle i wneud hynny eto. Ond dyma beth o'n i am ofyn i'r Prif Weinidog, ac anghytuno gyda'r Weinydd o'r Wrthblaid. Nid mater o wahaniaeth barn yw hwn. Mater o gyfreithwyr yn Llywodraeth San Steffan, ac o bosib yn Senedd y Deyrnas Unedig, nad ydyn nhw'n deall datganoli. Yn wahanol i'r lle hwn, ble mae cyfreithwyr Comisiwn Cynulliad y Cenedlaethol a chyfreithwyr Llywodraeth Cymru yn un, ynglyn â'n dealltwriaeth ni o'r sefyllfa. A pan mae'r Weinydd o'r Wrthblaid yn dweud bod hwn yn addewid mewn manifesto, pa hawl sydd gan Lywodraeth y Deyrnas Unedig i geisio gweithredu cyfraith nad yw'n gyfreithlon, gan esgus bod hwnnw mewn manifesto. Ac felly, Prif Weinidog, dwi'n channoch chi beidio trafod gyda Prif Weinidog y Deyrnas Unedig. Awn ni etholiad yn y cynulliad hwn, dawn yn ôl am mandad i ddatblygu setliad cyfansoddiadol bydd yn cadw ni mas o drafferthion fel hyn.
Wel, wy'n siŵr bydd pobl Cymru yn clywed y neges ynglyn â beth yw safbwynt y twried yn Lloegr tuag at Cymru a wneud y penderfyniad maen nhw eisiau. By'n siŵr bydde fi a fe mewn sefyllfa gwahanol ynglyn â mha ffordd iddyn nhw i benderfynu. Ond mae'r pwynt mae'n fe'n wneud yn pwynt difrifol ac yn pwynt teg, sef, nid mater yw hwn o beth yw'ch barn chi ar y bil i hunan, ond beth yw'ch barn chi ar y setliad cyfansoddiadol ar ôl y bil amaethyddol. Allai y mater hyn bod am rhywbeth. Mae'r pwnc ddim yn bwysig. I ni'n cymryd y safbwynt fel hyn, rhywbeth i bobl Cymru a chynulliad Cymru yw hwn a nid i Lywodraeth y Deyrnas Unedig. Barn y twried yma yn y siambr yw taw nid rhywbeth i bobl Cymru yw hwn, ond rhywbeth i Lywodraeth y Deyrnas Unedig i cymdogio nhw yn Llundain. Nid felly yw barn wy'n siŵr y pleidau eraill yn y siambr hyn.
Thank you. We now move to the business statement, and I call on the Minister.